I was just checking if that old security camera actually worked. My son-in-law Bradley had been tinkering with it for months, claiming the system was too complicated to fix. Forgot to mention to anyone that I'd finally gotten it running again. 4 days of footage waited on the laptop screen. I clicked through the timestamps casually, mostly just me shuffling around the house, reading newspapers, the usual routine of a 79-year-old widower. Then I saw Sunday morning, 6:23 a.m. My daughter Jenny in the kitchen, moving with purpose while she thought I was asleep. What she was doing to my morning coffee made my blood run cold. I've spent 30 years as an insurance investigator. I know suspicious behavior when I see it, but I never expected to find it in my own kitchen, from my own daughter. Let me tell you what those cameras revealed about the people I trusted most. My name is James Whitman. I'm 69 years old, and until 3 years ago, I thought I knew my family. For 30 years, I worked as a senior insurance investigator for Midwest Mutual. My specialty was medical fraud, disability scams, staged accidents, suspicious deaths. I developed what my colleagues called the Whitman method. Follow the money, document everything, trust the evidence over emotion. It made me very good at my job. Maybe too good. My wife Eleanor used to joke that I could spot a lie from 3 counties away. "You'd make a terrible poker player, Jim," she'd say. "You assume everyone's cheating." She wasn't wrong. In 30 years, I exposed over 200 fraudulent claims, saving the company approximately $47 million. I received commendations, awards, even testified before Congress about insurance fraud prevention. But Eleanor was my blind spot. She believed in people's goodness. She softened my edges, reminded me that not every inconsistency indicated deception. When she died 3 years ago from pancreatic cancer, I lost more than my wife. I lost my moral compass. Jenny is our only child. 42 years old, divorced, struggling. She worked in medical billing until 18 months ago when her company downsized. Her ex-husband, Bradley, well, technically he's still her husband, they never finalized the divorce, lost his pharmaceutical sales job around the same time. Between you and me, I suspected Bradley had a gambling problem. Too many business trips to Atlantic City, too many urgent requests for small loans. After Eleanor's funeral, Jenny started visiting more frequently. Every Sunday, sometimes during the week. She'd bring groceries, help with household maintenance, organize my medications. I appreciated the attention. Grief makes you vulnerable to kindness, even when that kindness has ulterior motives. The house Eleanor and I shared for 28 years is worth approximately $850,000. It sits on 2 acres in Westfield, New Jersey, close enough to Manhattan for my commuting days, far enough out for Eleanor's garden. The mortgage was paid off years ago. I live comfortably on my pension and Social Security, about $8,200 monthly, more than enough for one person. 6 months ago, I started experiencing what I assumed were normal signs of aging. Occasional dizziness, memory lapses, coordination problems, small falls, nothing serious but concerning enough that Jenny insisted I see Dr. Catherine Hayes, my physician of 15 years. Dr. Hayes ran extensive tests, blood work, neurological assessments, cognitive evaluations. Everything came back normal for a man my age. "You're actually in excellent health, James," she told me. "Your symptoms might be stress-related. Grief affects people differently." But the symptoms persisted. I'd wake up groggy, struggle to remember conversations, lose my balance on familiar stairs. Jenny expressed increasing concern about my living alone. She suggested assisted living facilities, showed me brochures for active senior communities. I resisted. This house contains 40 years of memories with Eleanor. I wasn't ready to abandon them. The security camera system was Bradley's idea. "For your protection, Jim," he said during one Sunday visit, "if something happens, we'll have a record." The irony would become apparent later. I had installed the original system in 2019 after a neighbor's house was burglarized. 4 cameras, front door, back door, living room, kitchen. The monitoring equipment lived in my study, connected to an older laptop that Eleanor used for her digital photo projects. Last winter, the system malfunctioned. The laptop died, taking the monitoring software with it. I mentioned this to Bradley in passing. Something about needing to call the security company. "Don't waste your money," he said. "I know computers. Let me take a look." For 6 months, I assumed the cameras were inoperative. Bradley occasionally tinkered with the equipment, claiming the problem was more complex than anticipated. I didn't mind. At my age, what did I need surveillance for? This past Friday, Jenny arrived for her usual weekend visit with an overnight bag. "I want to take care of you this Father's Day," she said, "like you took care of Mom." The parallel struck me as odd. Eleanor had been terminally ill. I was simply aging. Jenny insisted on organizing my weekly medication regimen. 7 prescription bottles, blood pressure, cholesterol, a mild sleep aid, vitamins. Nothing complicated, but she arranged them in a daily pill organizer with almost clinical precision. "This way you won't accidentally double dose," she explained. Saturday morning, Bradley arrived earlier than usual. He seemed nervous, kept checking his phone, made several trips to his car. When I asked about his restlessness, he claimed work stress. This seemed unlikely, given his unemployment status. That afternoon, I experienced the worst drowsiness I'd felt in months. After my morning coffee, I could barely keep my eyes open. Jenny suggested I nap on the living room couch while she prepared lunch. I slept for 3 hours, unusual for someone who typically naps 30 minutes maximum. Saturday evening, Jenny made dinner, my favorite pot roast recipe, Eleanor's version. We ate on the good china like a celebration. But something felt performative about the evening, like Jenny was rehearsing for an audience I couldn't see. Sunday morning, Father's Day, I woke feeling disoriented and nauseous. Jenny brought my coffee and pills to the bedroom, another unusual gesture. "Stay in bed today, Dad," she said. "You deserve to be pampered." That's when I decided to check the security system, not from suspicion exactly, more from boredom, and maybe a trace of my old investigative instincts. I walked to my study, expecting to find dead monitors and tangled cables. Instead, the laptop screen glowed softly. A familiar interface displayed 4 camera feeds. The timestamp read live. Bradley had fixed the system, and forgot to mention it. The discovery that my security cameras were functional should have been reassuring. Instead, it triggered something Eleanor used to call my investigative paranoia, that nagging feeling when patterns don't align with expectations. I spent Sunday afternoon reviewing the previous 3 days of footage. The system automatically archives video in 12-hour segments, 96 hours of material compressed and time-stamped, most of it mundane. Me reading newspapers, watching television, moving slowly through daily routines. But Friday evening's footage told a different story. At 8:47 p.m., Jenny entered the kitchen while I watched news in the living room. She moved purposefully to my medication organizer, removing 2 pills from the bottle labeled sleep aid. Take one as needed. Instead of placing them in Friday's compartment, she wrapped them in tissue and slipped them into her purse. The gesture lasted maybe 15 seconds. Without the camera, I never would have noticed. Saturday morning revealed more concerning behavior. At 6:15 a.m., before I woke up, Jenny entered the kitchen again. She prepared my usual coffee, black, 1 sugar, but added something from a small bottle she produced from her purse. The liquid was clear, barely visible as it dissolved. By 6:30 a.m., she was back in the guest bedroom, appearing to sleep. When I came downstairs at 7 a.m., she emerged minutes later in her bathrobe, yawning convincingly. "Good morning, Dad. Coffee's ready." I remembered that morning. The coffee tasted slightly bitter, but I attributed this to a new brand Jenny had purchased. Within an hour, I felt extremely drowsy. That's when I took my 3-hour nap. Saturday afternoon's footage showed Bradley's arrival at 11:23 a.m. He seemed agitated, pacing in the driveway before ringing the doorbell. Once inside, he and Jenny held a whispered conversation in the kitchen while I slept on the couch. The camera angle prevented me from reading their lips, but their body language suggested disagreement. At one point, Bradley gestured toward the staircase and shook his head emphatically. Jenny placed her hand on his arm in what appeared to be reassurance. They separated when I stirred awake. Saturday evening provided the most disturbing revelation. After dinner, while I dozed in my recliner, Jenny and Bradley worked together in the hallway. Bradley used a screwdriver to loosen the banister railing at the top of the staircase. Jenny watched nervously, occasionally glancing toward the living room where I sat. The loosening was subtle, not enough to cause immediate collapse, but sufficient to create instability if someone grasped the railing for support. Bradley tested his work, ensuring the railing would shift under pressure but not fall completely. They cleaned up their tools and returned to the living room as if nothing had happened. "Dad, maybe you should use the downstairs bathroom tonight," Jenny suggested. "Those stairs look steep when you're tired." Sunday morning's footage, this morning, revealed the most shocking behavior yet. At 6:23 a.m., Jenny entered the kitchen with practiced stealth. She prepared my coffee as usual, then removed a small bottle from her purse. This time I could see the label, "Liquid melatonin, extra strength." She added approximately 2 teaspoons to my coffee, far exceeding the recommended dosage. Next, she opened my pill organizer and removed 2 additional sleep aids from the weekly supply. She crushed them using the handle of a butter knife, mixing the powder into my morning medication cup. Combined with the coffee additive, this represented roughly 4 times my normal sleep aid dosage. But the most chilling moment came next. Jenny stood at the kitchen counter for nearly 2 minutes, staring at the coffee mug. Her expression wasn't guilt or uncertainty, it was calculation. She was measuring dosages, timing effects, planning outcomes. Then she checked her phone and sent a text message. The recipient's name wasn't visible from the camera angle, but the message was brief. 30 seconds later, her phone buzzed with a response. She nodded, deleted both messages, and carried my doctored coffee upstairs. I pretended to be asleep when she entered my bedroom. "Morning, Dad," she whispered. "Coffee and pills. Happy Father's Day." After she left, I waited 20 minutes before reviewing the footage. What I discovered contradicted every assumption I'd made about my daughter's motivations. This wasn't sudden desperation. This was systematic preparation. I spent the afternoon cross-referencing the footage with my recent medical symptoms. The correlation was undeniable. Every episode of unusual drowsiness, confusion, or coordination problems coincided with Jenny's visits. Every accident I'd experienced, slipping in the bathroom, stumbling on the stairs, losing my balance in the kitchen, occurred within hours of her assistance with my medications. My daughter wasn't helping me. She was slowly poisoning me. But why? Jenny knew she was my sole heir. The house, my savings account, my investment portfolio, everything would transfer to her eventually. Why risk criminal charges for money she'd inherit naturally? The answer came when I reviewed my insurance documents. 6 months after Eleanor's death, my life insurance policy increased from $100,000 to $2.3 million. I remembered signing papers during that grief-stricken period, but I'd assumed they were routine beneficiary updates. Jenny had convinced me to increase my coverage for her security. At the time, it seemed reasonable. I was her only financial safety net. Why not ensure she'd be comfortable if something happened to me? Now I understood the timeline. Policy increase, then systematic drugging, then staged accidents. My daughter had created a murder plan disguised as elder care, but she'd made one critical mistake. She'd forgotten that insurance investigators have access to their own policies, including the one detail that would expose her entire scheme. My policy contained an accelerated death benefit clause. If I died from accidental causes within the first 2 years of coverage increase, the payout would be immediate and uncontestable. No investigation period, no fraud review, just $2.3 million deposited directly into Jenny's account. The coverage increase became active on January 15th. Today was June 18th. In exactly 31 days, the accelerated benefit period would expire, and any suspicious death would trigger a full investigation. Jenny was working against a deadline. The evidence was damning, but incomplete. 30 years of insurance investigation taught me the difference between suspicion and proof. I had video of medication tampering and property sabotage, but I needed to understand the full scope of Jenny's plan. I spent Sunday evening creating what I call a fraud profile, a systematic analysis of motive, means, and opportunity. In insurance investigation, this process identifies the likely method and timeline of fraudulent activity. Motive was obvious, $2.3 million plus my house and savings. Total inheritance value approximately $3.2 million. For someone facing unemployment, foreclosure, and potential divorce, this represented generational wealth. Means required more investigation. I reviewed my medical records from the past 6 months, cross-referencing doctor visits with Jenny's presence in my home. The pattern was significant. Every medical appointment where I reported new symptoms occurred within 48 hours of Jenny's weekend visits. Dr. Hayes's notes documented my complaints: dizziness, confusion, coordination problems, memory lapses. Classic signs of either aging or intentional medication overdose. I researched the drugs Jenny had been administering. Melatonin combined with prescription sleep aids creates a compound sedative effect. In elderly patients, this combination can cause severe disorientation, increased fall risk, and temporary cognitive impairment. Exactly the symptoms I'd been experiencing. The loose stair railing represented the accident vector. Jenny was creating opportunities for a natural fall that would appear consistent with my documented balance problems. The timing suggested she planned to implement this soon. Opportunity analysis revealed the sophistication of her approach. Jenny had systematically created legitimate reasons to access my medications, my house, and my personal information. She'd positioned herself as my primary caregiver, making her presence during any accident seem natural and helpful. But the insurance angle required deeper investigation. I accessed my policy documents through Midwest Mutual's online portal. As a retired employee, I maintained certain research privileges within the system. What I discovered exceeded my worst suspicions. The policy increase hadn't been my idea. Jenny had initiated the process through an insurance agent named Patricia Brennan, someone I'd never met. The application contained medical information that was accurate but selective, emphasizing my age and recent widowerhood while omitting my generally excellent health. More disturbing, the application included forged financial information. It claimed my annual income was $45,000 higher than reality, justifying the massive coverage increase. Jenny had provided fabricated bank statements and investment summaries to support this fiction. This wasn't desperate improvisation. This was sophisticated insurance fraud, executed by someone who understood the industry's vulnerabilities. I contacted Patricia Brennan's office Monday morning, identifying myself as the policyholder with questions about my coverage. Her assistant scheduled a callback within 2 hours. "Mr. Whitman," Patricia said when she called back, "how can I help you today?" "I'm reviewing my policy details," I said. "I want to understand exactly what I signed in January." "Of course. Your daughter was very thorough during the application process. She explained that you wanted to ensure her financial security after your wife's passing. Very thoughtful planning." "My daughter handled the application. She accompanied you to my office on January 8th, helped translate some of the technical language. You seemed a bit overwhelmed by the process, which is completely understandable given your recent loss." I had no memory of visiting Patricia Brennan's office. January 8th was a Wednesday. I reviewed my calendar and found no record of any appointment. But I did find something else. A doctor's appointment with Dr. Hayes that same morning. I called Dr. Hayes's office and requested my records from January 8th. The appointment notes indicated I'd received a mild sedative for anxiety related to handling Eleanor's estate. The timing suggested Jenny had drugged me before the insurance meeting, ensuring I'd be compliant and confused during the application process. This revealed the true scope of her plan. She hadn't started poisoning me 6 months ago. She'd been manipulating me since Eleanor's death, using grief and medication to control my decision-making. But she'd made another mistake. Insurance fraud requires meticulous documentation, and documentation creates evidence trails. I spent Monday afternoon mapping every financial transaction related to the policy increase. The premium payments came from my checking account through automatic withdrawal. But the initial application fee, $847, was paid by cashier's check purchased from Bradley's bank account. The purchase date was January 5th, 3 days before my supposed office visit. This proved premeditation. Jenny and Bradley had planned the insurance fraud before approaching me about the policy increase. They'd prepared their financial documentation, scheduled the appointment, and orchestrated my sedation to ensure compliance. I now had evidence of conspiracy, insurance fraud, elder abuse, and attempted murder. But I needed one more piece: proof of intent to collect the insurance money through my death. That evidence came from an unexpected source. While reviewing Jenny's text messages from Sunday morning, I noticed something I'd missed initially. After deleting her messages, she'd opened her phone's calculator app. The calculation was still visible. 2,300,000 divided 3 equals 666.67. She was dividing the insurance payout 3 ways. Jenny, Bradley, and someone else were planning to split my life insurance money, I needed to discover the third conspirator's identity, and I needed to do it before July 19th, their deadline for executing my murder. Monday night, I transformed my study into an investigation headquarters. For the first time in 3 years, I felt like myself again. Not a grieving widower, but a professional fraud investigator with a case to solve. The wall above my desk became a crime board. Photos of Jenny and Bradley, timeline charts, financial documents, insurance paperwork. In the center, I placed a photograph of myself with the words "intended victim" written beneath. This case would require the same methodical approach I'd used for 30 years, but with additional constraints. I couldn't involve local police until I had ironclad evidence. Family accusations are often dismissed as misunderstandings or elder paranoia. I needed documentation that would survive legal scrutiny and family denial. More importantly, I couldn't let Jenny know I'd discovered her plan. If she suspected my awareness, she might accelerate the timeline or flee. My best advantage was her belief that I remained oblivious to the security cameras. I established 3 investigation priorities: identify the third conspirator, document the murder plan's specifics, and create uncontestable evidence for prosecution. Priority 1 required analyzing Jenny's financial records. As co-signer on my checking account, a convenience arrangement from Eleanor's illness, I had legal access to transaction histories. What I found confirmed my suspicions about Bradley's gambling problem. Over the past 18 months, Bradley had made regular cash withdrawals totaling $180,000. The withdrawal locations clustered around Atlantic City casinos and online gambling sites. Several transactions occurred on the same days as Jenny's visits to my house, suggesting she'd been enabling his addiction with my money. But the third conspirator's identity emerged from a different source: my own insurance company's records. Tuesday morning, I called my former supervisor at Midwest Mutual. Jack Morrison had managed the fraud investigation department for 12 years. He owed me several professional favors. "Jim," Jack said when I reached him, "good to hear your voice. How's retirement treating you?" "Complicated, Jack. I need a favor. Off the books." "What kind of favor?" "I need you to run a cross-reference check on a life insurance policy. Look for any red flags or associated investigations." "This better not be about a neighbor's suspicious accident," Jack laughed. "You know I can't. It's my policy, Jack. Something feels wrong about the application process." The tone shifted immediately. Jack understood that a retired investigator requesting scrutiny of his own policy indicated serious concerns. "Give me the policy number," he said. "I'll run it through our fraud detection algorithms." 4 hours later, Jack called back with disturbing news. "Jim, your policy's been flagged in our system, not for fraud, for association with another case. The agent who wrote your policy, Patricia Brennan, is under investigation for selling inflated coverage to elderly clients with suspicious beneficiary arrangements." "What kind of arrangements?" "Policies where the beneficiaries have recent financial pressures, prior insurance claims, or connections to medical professionals. 3 of her clients died within 8 months of policy increases. All ruled accidental, but the pattern triggered our review." "Have any beneficiaries been charged?" "One case went to prosecution. The beneficiary's boyfriend was a paramedic who had access to emergency medications. He'd been sedating the victim to stage falls. The girlfriend inherited $1.8 million before we caught them." The parallel was unmistakable. Jenny needed someone with medical knowledge to execute her plan safely. The third conspirator had to be a healthcare professional. I reviewed Dr. Hayes' records of my recent visits. Every appointment where I reported symptoms included notes about medication reviews and dosage adjustments. But one detail stood out. A nurse named Rebecca Thompson had conducted my initial screenings during each visit. Rebecca Thompson, 26 years old, recently hired, currently dating a man named Bradley Mitchell according to her social media profiles. The pieces aligned perfectly. Jenny provided access and cover, Bradley created the accidents, and Rebecca supplied the medical expertise to calibrate dosages and symptoms. She'd even used her position at Dr. Hayes' office to document my declining health in official medical records. This was why Jenny felt confident about the timeline. She had a medical professional ensuring that my symptoms would appear consistent with accidental death, even under autopsy examination. But Rebecca had made a critical mistake. Her relationship with Bradley created a digital trail on social media platforms. I spent Tuesday evening documenting their online interactions, screenshotting evidence of their relationship timeline, and mapping their communication patterns around dates when I'd experienced severe symptoms. More importantly, I discovered Rebecca's motivation. Her nursing school loans totaled $87,000, with payments severely overdue. Her car had been repossessed 2 months ago. She was facing financial ruin, making her an ideal recruit for Jenny's scheme. By Wednesday morning, I had mapped the complete conspiracy. Jenny orchestrated the plan and provided access. Bradley created accident opportunities and shared the gambling debt pressure. Rebecca supplied medical knowledge and documented my deteriorating health in official records. Each conspirator brought essential capabilities, and each stood to gain approximately $766,667 from my death, enough to solve their individual financial crises. Now I needed to prove their intent to kill me. Wednesday afternoon, I implemented what I call a controlled exposure strategy. I would provide the conspirators with an irresistible opportunity to execute their plan while documenting their actions for prosecution. First, I called Jenny to share fabricated news about my health. "The doctor wants me to come in for additional tests," I told her. "Something about irregular heartbeat patterns. She's concerned about my medication interactions." "Oh, Dad," Jenny replied with practiced concern. "Maybe you should stay with me until the tests are complete. I hate thinking of you alone in that big house." "That's sweet, honey, but I'm fine. Dr. Hayes said the symptoms might be related to stress, nothing serious." "Well, if you're sure. But promise me you'll be careful on those stairs. I noticed the railing felt loose last weekend." The casual mention of the sabotaged railing confirmed her knowledge of Bradley's work. Next, I contacted attorney Philip Morgan, my neighbor and Eleanor's former estate lawyer. Philip had handled our wills, property transfers, and insurance beneficiary arrangements. He knew my family situation and had professional obligations regarding elder abuse. "Philip," I said when I reached his office, "I need legal advice about a sensitive family matter." "Of course, Jim. What's going on?" "I suspect my daughter might be involved in insurance fraud. I need to understand my legal options before contacting police." "That's a serious accusation. What evidence do you have?" I arranged to meet Philip Thursday morning to review my documentation. As an attorney specializing in elder law, he would understand the legal requirements for prosecution and help me present evidence in a format that prosecutors could use. Finally, I prepared my insurance company's fraud department for what was coming. I couldn't file a report yet. The crime was incomplete, but I could establish a paper trail that would expedite investigation once I provided evidence. By Thursday evening, I would be ready to implement the final phase, giving Jenny and her conspirators exactly what they wanted: an opportunity to kill me under seemingly natural circumstances, while every detail was recorded for posterity. But first I needed to ensure my own survival, because if my plan failed, the insurance money would still go to Jenny, and she'd have gotten away with murder. Thursday morning arrived with unexpected urgency. At 7:30 a.m., Jenny called with news that would accelerate everyone's timeline. "Dad, I just spoke with Dr. Hayes' office," she said, her voice carrying forced concern. "They had a cancellation, and she wants to see you this afternoon about your heart rhythm tests. Can you be there at 2:30? I hadn't scheduled any heart tests. This was Jenny creating medical documentation to support my upcoming natural death. "Of course," I replied. "Should you drive me? I've been feeling dizzy lately." "That's exactly why I'm worried. Yes, I'll pick you up at 2 o'clock. We can stop for lunch afterward. Maybe talk about your living situation again." After hanging up, I immediately called Dr. Hayes' office. The receptionist confirmed my appointment but seemed confused about the scheduling. "Mr. Whitman, this appointment was added this morning by your daughter. She said you'd been experiencing chest pains and needed urgent evaluation." "I haven't had any chest pains." "Oh, well, perhaps there was miscommunication. Would you like to reschedule?" "No, I'll keep the appointment, but I'd like to request that only Dr. Hayes conduct the examination. No nursing staff assistants. This would prevent Rebecca Thompson from participating in whatever documentation they plan to create." At 11 a.m., I met with attorney Philip Morgan in his office. I'd prepared a comprehensive evidence package: security camera footage, financial records, insurance documentation, medical records, and my investigative timeline. Philip reviewed the materials with growing alarm. As an elder law specialist, he'd seen financial exploitation cases, but rarely attempted murder for insurance money. "Jim, this evidence is compelling, but we need to be extremely careful about next steps," he said. "If you're correct about their timeline, they may act within days." "I know. That's why I want to accelerate their plan under controlled circumstances." I explained my strategy: provide Jenny with an irresistible opportunity to implement her murder plan while ensuring my survival and documenting her actions for prosecution. "This is incredibly dangerous," Philip warned. "If something goes wrong, if I do nothing, I'll be dead within 2 weeks anyway. At least this way we catch them in the act." Philip agreed to serve as my emergency contact and legal representative. If anything happened to me, he would immediately contact police and provide them with all evidence. At 1:30 p.m., I implemented the final phase of my plan. First, I updated my security camera system to automatically upload footage to a cloud storage account Philip could access. Even if the conspirators destroyed my computer, the evidence would survive. Second, I prepared what appeared to be a suicide note, actually a detailed confession explaining the evidence against Jenny, Bradley, and Rebecca. I placed this in my bedroom dresser drawer, where it would be found during any death investigation. Third, I took precisely half of my normal sleep medication dose and hid the remaining pills in my sock drawer. This would create the appearance of accidental overdose while keeping me conscious enough to respond to emergency intervention. Finally, I loosened several floorboards in my bedroom and bathroom, creating additional accident opportunities that would appear consistent with my documented balance problems. When Jenny arrived at 2 p.m., I was ready. "You look tired, Dad," she observed as we drove to Dr. Hayes' office. "Are you taking your medications correctly?" "I think so. Sometimes I forget if I've already taken them." "Maybe we should organize a better system. I worry about accidental double dosing." The appointment with Dr. Hayes lasted 40 minutes. She conducted a thorough cardiac evaluation and found no abnormalities. But I noticed Rebecca Thompson lurking in the hallway, occasionally entering our examination room with unnecessary chart updates. "Your heart rhythm is completely normal, James," Dr. Hayes concluded. "I'm not sure why there was concern about irregularities." "Maybe the stress of managing medications," Jenny suggested. "He's been confused about dosages lately." Dr. Hayes made notes about medication management issues and recommended that I consider having someone assist with daily pill organization. Rebecca Thompson volunteered to help create a new medication schedule. "That won't be necessary," I said. "My daughter already helps with that." After the appointment, Jenny suggested we stop for early dinner at my favorite restaurant. During the meal, she steered conversation toward my will and estate planning. "Have you thought about updating your beneficiary information?" she asked. "With Mom gone, maybe you should add Bradley as a secondary beneficiary, just in case something happens to both of us." "Why would something happen to you?" "I just mean accidents happen. Car crashes, illness. It would give you peace of mind knowing everything's handled." This confirmed that Bradley's name would appear on updated insurance documents, providing him legal standing to claim benefits if Jenny were unable to do so. At 6 p.m., we returned to my house. Jenny suggested I rest while she prepared dinner. "You've had a long day, Dad. Why don't you take a nap?" I agreed, making sure to leave my bedroom door slightly open. If Jenny planned to accelerate my death tonight, I wanted the cameras to capture every detail. At 7:15 p.m., Jenny brought me tea and evening medications. "I added some honey for your throat," she said. "You sounded hoarse at the doctor's office." The tea tasted sweeter than usual, with a slightly bitter aftertaste. I pretended to drink it while actually spilling most of the liquid into a plant next to my bed. Within 30 minutes, I began exhibiting signs of severe sedation, slurred speech, unsteady movement, confusion. Jenny checked on me regularly, each time expressing increasing concern about my condition. At 8:45 p.m., Bradley arrived unexpectedly. "I was in the neighborhood," he said, though we lived 15 miles from any location he might have business visiting. "Thought I'd stop by and see how Jim's doing." Jenny updated Bradley on my condition. "He's been confused all evening," she said. "Dizzy, unsteady. Maybe we should call an ambulance." "Let's give it a few more minutes," Bradley replied. Sometimes these episodes pass on their own. They were waiting for peak sedation before implementing their accident scenario. At 9:20 p.m., I provided them with the opportunity they'd been planning for months. I stumbled from my bedroom toward the bathroom, making sure my movements appeared genuinely unsteady. The loose floorboards I'd prepared earlier created authentic-sounding creaks and shifts beneath my feet. "Dad, be careful," Jenny called from the kitchen, but she made no move to assist me. Instead, I heard her whisper urgently to Bradley. In the bathroom, I deliberately knocked over a water glass, creating a sound that would draw their attention. Then I positioned myself at the top of the staircase, near the loosened railing Bradley had sabotaged. Jenny appeared in the hallway within seconds. "Dad, what are you doing? You shouldn't be walking around in your condition." "I needed the bathroom," I slurred, gripping the sabotaged railing for support. As expected, it shifted dangerously under my weight. "The railing's loose," I said, louder than necessary. I could have fallen. "Let me help you back to bed," Jenny said, but her assistance was minimal. She guided me just enough to appear helpful while ensuring I remained near the dangerous staircase. Bradley joined us, ostensibly to help. "Careful, Jim. Those stairs are steep when you're not feeling well." Together, they positioned me at the top of the staircase, each holding one of my arms. To any observer, they appeared to be preventing a fall. In reality, they were creating the perfect setup for a staged accident. "Maybe you should hold the railing for balance," Bradley suggested, knowing it would give way under pressure. I gripped the loose railing as instructed. It shifted immediately, pulling me off balance toward the staircase, but instead of falling, I grabbed Bradley's arm, creating a moment of genuine alarm. "Whoa," he said, steadying me. "That was close." "Too close," Jenny agreed. "Dad, you need medical attention. I'm calling an ambulance." This was their moment. Call emergency services, report an elderly man's fall down the stairs, express appropriate grief and shock. Rebecca Thompson would probably be dispatched with the ambulance crew, ready to document my injuries and confirm accidental death. But I wasn't ready to let them complete their plan. "Wait," I said, suddenly speaking clearly. "Before you call anyone, I want you both to know something." Jenny paused with her phone already dialing. "Dad, we need to get you help." "I know about the security cameras," I said. The silence that followed was profound. Jenny and Bradley exchanged glances that confirmed every suspicion I'd developed. "What cameras?" Bradley asked, but his voice lacked conviction. "The ones you fixed 6 months ago. The ones that recorded Jenny adding sedatives to my coffee. The ones that showed you loosening this railing." Jenny's face drained of color. "Dad, you're confused. The medications are making you paranoid. $2.3 million, I continued. Divided 3 ways. You, Bradley, and Rebecca Thompson from Dr. Hayes' office." Bradley stepped back involuntarily. "Jim, I don't know what you're talking about. Gambling debts of $180,000, medical school loans of $87,000, insurance fraud charges that carry maximum sentences of 20 years. Jenny's phone slipped from her hand, clattering on the hardwood floor. "The cameras have been uploading footage to a secure server for the past 3 days," I said. "My attorney has copies of everything. If anything happens to me, accidentally or otherwise, you'll both be charged with conspiracy to commit murder." The transformation in Jenny's demeanor was immediate and complete. The concerned daughter disappeared, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. "You can't prove anything," she said. "You're a confused old man with documented health problems." "Medical records that Rebecca Thompson helped falsify," I replied. "Insurance applications that you forged, financial records showing Bradley's casino withdrawals." For the first time in months, I felt completely clear-headed. The fog of constant sedation had lifted, revealing the sharp investigative mind that had defined my career. But I also felt something I hadn't expected: profound sadness. This wasn't a case anymore. This was my daughter choosing money over love. The confrontation was over. Now came the hardest part: deciding what kind of justice a father seeks against his own child. The next few minutes passed in tense silence. Jenny and Bradley stood at the top of my staircase, processing the destruction of their carefully planned scheme. I remained steady despite my earlier performance, watching them realize that their victim had been investigating them. "What do you want?" Jenny finally asked, her voice stripped of any pretense. "I want the truth," I said, All of it, starting with when this plan began. Bradley cracked first. It wasn't supposed to hurt anyone, we just needed— "Shut up!" Jenny snapped. But the damage was done. "Needed what?" I pressed. "Money," Bradley admitted. "I owe people, dangerous people. They gave me until the end of July. So you decided to kill me for insurance money." "It wasn't killing," Jenny said defensively. "You're old. You're lonely. You miss Mom. We were helping you avoid years of suffering." The rationalization was breathtaking. In her mind, murder had become mercy. "Whose idea was it?" I asked. "Mine," Jenny said without hesitation. Bradley was going to lose his legs if he couldn't pay. Rebecca was going to lose her license. I found a solution that helped everyone. Except me. You would have died naturally in a few years anyway. This just accelerated the timeline. I'd heard similar justifications from insurance fraudsters throughout my career. The ability to reframe murder as mercy, theft as necessity, betrayal as love. It never stopped disturbing me. But this time was different. This time the perpetrator was someone I'd raised, loved, and trusted. "Rebecca Thompson," I said. "How long has she been involved?" "Since January," Bradley answered before Jenny could stop him. "She helped us understand the medical side, made sure your symptoms looked right." "And Dr. Hayes doesn't know?" "Of course not. Rebecca handled your file updates, added notes about confusion, balance problems, medication mistakes, built a history that would support accidental death." This level of medical documentation fraud was sophisticated and deeply illegal. Rebecca had used her position to create false medical records, a crime that would cost her both her nursing license and her freedom. "What happens now?" Jenny asked. I considered my options. As a father, I wanted to find some way to save my daughter from the consequences of her choices. As a former investigator, I knew that mercy without accountability enables future crimes. "Now you have a choice," I said. "You can continue denying everything, force me to turn the evidence over to police, and face first-degree murder conspiracy charges. Or you can confess, cooperate with authorities, and accept responsibility for what you've done." "What's the difference?" Bradley asked. "The difference between 20 years in prison and 5 to 8 years with possibility of parole." I had no authority to make such deals, but my 30 years of experience gave me realistic expectations about prosecutorial negotiations. "And if we confess?" Jenny asked. "You tell the police everything. You testify against Rebecca Thompson, who was manipulating medical records. You make full financial restitution for the money you've stolen from my accounts, and you accept whatever sentence the court imposes. And you?" Jenny's voice was barely audible. "I'll ask the court to consider your cooperation during sentencing. I'll acknowledge that gambling addiction and financial desperation contributed to your choices, but I won't minimize what you tried to do." The silence stretched for nearly a minute. Finally, Bradley spoke. "I'll confess. I'll tell them everything." Jenny stared at him in shock. "Bradley, don't—" "It's over, Jen. He has us. And maybe it's better this way. I'm tired of being scared all the time." "You'll lose everything," Jenny said. "I already lost everything. My job, my dignity, my family's respect. At least this way, I can stop running." Bradley's admission created momentum. Jenny realized that denying her involvement would be pointless if both Bradley and Rebecca confessed to conspiracy charges. "Fine," she said, "but I want something in return." "You're not in a position to negotiate," I replied. "I want you to understand why, not the money part, the other part." "What other part?" "I've been watching you disappear since Mom died. You barely eat, you don't see friends, you spend hours staring at her photos. You're not living, Dad. You're just existing." Her words hit harder than I expected. Since Eleanor's death, I had been going through the motions of life without truly engaging with it. "So you decided to end my suffering by ending my life." "I decided to end both our suffering while solving our financial problems." It was a chilling logic, but it revealed something I needed to understand. Jenny's actions stemmed from more than greed. They came from a twisted form of love that had convinced her murder was mercy. Understanding her motivation didn't excuse her choices, but it changed how I would approach whatever came next. That night, I sat in my study surrounded by 3 years of grief and 3 days of evidence. The contrast was stark. Photographs of family holidays and birthday celebrations arranged next to legal documents proving my daughter's attempt to murder me. At 11 p.m., I called Detective Sarah Walsh of the Westfield Police Department. Sarah had worked with me on several insurance fraud cases during my career. She understood the complexities of financial crimes and had experience with elder abuse investigations. "Jim Whitman," she said when she answered. "This is a surprise. How have you been since Eleanor passed?" "Complicated, Sarah. I need to report a crime, but it's going to be difficult to believe." "What kind of crime? Conspiracy to commit murder for life insurance money?" The line went quiet for several seconds. "Jim, who's the victim?" "I am." We arranged to meet at the police station the following morning. I would present my complete evidence package and request formal investigation of Jenny, Bradley, and Rebecca Thompson. Friday morning, I arrived at the station with 2 bankers' boxes of documentation. Sarah had prepared an interview room and brought Detective Michael Torres, who specialized in financial crimes. For 3 hours, I walked them through the complete timeline: security camera footage, insurance documents, medical records, financial transactions, timeline correlations. The evidence painted an undeniable picture of premeditated murder conspiracy. "This is one of the most thorough fraud investigations I've ever seen," Detective Torres said. "You built a better case than most prosecutors could manage." 30 years of practice, I replied. "What's your relationship with the primary suspect?" Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. "Jennifer Mitchell is my daughter." The room fell silent again. Both detectives understood the emotional complexity of a father investigating his own child for attempted murder. "Jim," Sarah said carefully, "are you certain you want to pursue prosecution? Family cases sometimes. Sarah, if someone else's daughter had tried to kill me for insurance money, what would you recommend?" "Full prosecution." "Then that's what I want." Detective Torres began preparing arrest warrants. The evidence was sufficient for conspiracy to commit murder charges against all 3 suspects. But Sarah had one more question. "Have you spoken with your daughter since discovering the evidence?" "Yes, last night. I gave her an opportunity to confess and cooperate." "What was her response?" "She agreed to tell the truth about Rebecca Thompson's involvement in exchange for consideration during sentencing." "And you're comfortable with that arrangement?" I considered the question carefully. Comfortable wasn't the right word. I was devastated, heartbroken, and angry. But I was also committed to justice. "I'm comfortable with my daughter facing the consequences of her choices," I said. "I'm not comfortable with her escaping those consequences because she's my family." The arrests occurred that afternoon. Sarah called me at 4:30 p.m. to report that all 3 suspects were in custody. Jenny and Bradley had been arrested at Jenny's apartment. Rebecca Thompson was taken into custody at the hospital where she worked. "Your daughter asked to speak with you," Sarah said. "She has information about additional victims." This was unexpected. "What additional victims?" "Apparently, Rebecca Thompson has been involved in other cases. Elderly patients whose symptoms don't match their medical histories. Your daughter says she has documentation." The scope of the conspiracy was expanding beyond my case. Rebecca had been using her position to identify vulnerable targets and facilitate insurance fraud schemes. I was just one victim in a larger operation. At 6 p.m., I met with Jenny in the county jail. She wore orange coveralls and looked younger than her 42 years. For a moment, I saw the child I'd raised instead of the woman who'd tried to kill me. "Dad," she said when I sat across from her, "I'm sorry." "For what, specifically?" "For trying to hurt you, for betraying your trust, for choosing money over family." "But not for the plan itself?" Jenny hesitated. "I'm sorry we got caught. I'm sorry you had to find out. But I'm not sorry we tried to end your suffering." Her inability to fully acknowledge the wrongness of attempted murder revealed the depth of her moral compromise. She still believed on some level that murder could be mercy. "Tell me about Rebecca's other cases," I said. "She's been doing this for 2 years, identifying patients with large life insurance policies, then documenting symptoms that would support accidental death. She has contacts at 3 different hospitals." "How many victims?" "At least 6 that I know about. Maybe more." The revelation was staggering. Rebecca Thompson had been operating a systematic murder-for-hire scheme using her medical access to facilitate insurance fraud conspiracies. She recruited desperate accomplices like Jenny and Bradley, providing them with professional cover for their crimes. "Will you testify about this?" I asked. "Yes. Rebecca convinced us this was routine, that lots of families did this when they needed money. She made it sound normal. This manipulation tactic was common in fraud schemes. Normalize the criminal behavior. Make it seem widespread and acceptable. Rebecca had exploited Jenny's financial desperation and moral flexibility to recruit her as an accomplice. "What happens to us now?" Jenny asked. "You face trial for conspiracy to commit murder. If you cooperate fully with the investigation of Rebecca's other cases, the prosecutor might consider reduced charges. And you? Will you ever forgive me?" The question I'd been dreading. Forgiveness was complex when the person seeking it had tried to kill you for money. "I'll always love you," I said. "But love doesn't mean ignoring consequences. You need to serve whatever sentence the court imposes. You need to make restitution for the money you stole. And you need to understand why what you did was wrong, not just why you got caught. How long will that take? However long it takes." As I left the jail, I realized this was only the beginning. The investigation would expand to include Rebecca's other victims. The media would cover the story extensively. My family's private tragedy would become public knowledge. But for the first time in 3 years, I felt something approaching peace. Justice wasn't just about punishment. It was about truth, accountability, and the possibility of redemption. Whether Jenny would pursue that possibility remained to be seen. 3 weeks after the arrests, Jenny made her choice. Through her court-appointed attorney, she accepted a plea agreement: conspiracy to commit murder in the second degree, elder abuse, and insurance fraud. In exchange for her full cooperation against Rebecca Thompson and information about other victims, she would receive a sentence of 5 to 8 years with possibility of parole after 3 years. Bradley received a similar deal: 8 years for his role in the conspiracy, with credit for time served and cooperation with ongoing investigations. Rebecca Thompson, as the architect of the scheme, faced first-degree murder conspiracy charges for 6 separate cases. She would likely spend the rest of her life in prison. The day before Jenny's sentencing hearing, she asked to meet with me one final time. We sat in the same jail interview room where she'd first agreed to cooperate with prosecutors. "I wrote you a letter," she said, sliding a folded paper across the table. "The court said I should read it during my sentencing, but I wanted you to hear it first." I unfolded the paper and read her handwritten words. "Dad, for 42 years, you taught me the difference between right and wrong. You showed me how to make ethical choices even when they were difficult. You demonstrated integrity, honesty, and respect for others. I ignored everything you taught me. When Mom died, I watched you struggle with grief and loneliness. Instead of helping you heal, I decided to exploit your vulnerability. I convinced myself that stealing your life would be mercy, that murdering you would be love. I was wrong about everything." You weren't suffering because you missed Mom. You were grieving because you loved her. That's not a disease to be cured. It's proof of 30 years of marriage worth celebrating. You weren't a burden on anyone. You were a father who deserved better than a daughter who saw dollar signs instead of a parent who needed support. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I understand what I did was evil. Not desperate, not justified, not merciful. Evil. I'm going to spend the next 5 years trying to become someone worthy of the values you taught me. I don't know if that's possible, but I'm going to try. I love you. That's probably hard to believe after what I did, but it's true. I loved you enough to want to end your pain. I just didn't love you enough to accept that it wasn't my choice to make. Jenny. I folded the letter and placed it in my jacket pocket. For the first time since this ordeal began, Jenny had acknowledged the full scope of her betrayal without excuse or rationalization. "This is a good start," I said. "A start toward what?" "Redemption. It's possible, but it requires more than words." "What else does it require?" "Time, consistency, and changed behavior. Letters are easy to write in jail. Living differently when you're released is harder." Jenny nodded. "The prosecutor said you're setting up some kind of trust fund?" "Yes. When you're released from prison, there will be money available for your housing, education, and basic needs. But access requires 3 conditions." "What conditions?" "First, you complete a victim impact program and demonstrate understanding of how your choices affected others. Second, you maintain steady employment and make regular restitution payments for the money you stole. Third, you participate in ongoing counseling to address the thinking patterns that led to these choices." "And if I don't meet those conditions?" The money goes to charity. You're free to rebuild your life independently, but you won't receive family financial support. This arrangement reflected my understanding of conditional love, support that encourages positive choices while avoiding enablement of destructive behavior. "How much money?" Jenny asked. "Enough to give you a genuine opportunity to restart your life. Not enough to make you comfortable without effort." The specific amount was $150,000, structured as monthly payments over 10 years. Jenny could live modestly while establishing independence, but she couldn't avoid responsibility for her own rehabilitation. "What about you?" she asked. "How do you move forward after this?" "I'm seeing a counselor who specializes in family trauma. I'm reconnecting with friends I neglected after your mother died. I'm learning to live again instead of just existing." "Are you dating?" The question surprised me. "Not yet, but I'm open to the possibility. Mom would want you to be happy. Your mother would want both of us to be happy, but she'd also want both of us to be honest about what happiness requires." "What does it require?" "Truth, accountability, and the courage to make better choices even when they're difficult." The conversation continued for another hour. We discussed practical matters: property management during her incarceration, communication schedules, family relationships with extended relatives who were struggling to understand the situation. But the most important conversation was about consequences and redemption. Jenny was beginning to understand that forgiveness couldn't erase the results of her choices, but it could create space for her to demonstrate changed behavior over time. As I prepared to leave, Jenny asked one final question. "Do you think we'll ever have a normal relationship again?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "But I think we might eventually have an honest relationship. That's probably more important than normal." 3 years from now, when Jenny becomes eligible for parole, we'll discover whether her words translate into changed behavior. Until then, love means maintaining boundaries while hoping for redemption. That's what conditional reconciliation looks like: support tied to accountability, forgiveness linked to demonstrated change, and hope balanced with realistic expectations. Some bridges can be rebuilt, but only after you stop the arson. 2 years have passed since Jenny's sentencing. Today, I received her first letter from minimum security prison, where she was transferred after 18 months of good behavior. The letter described her progress in the Victim Impact Program and her work tutoring other inmates for their GED exams. She sounds different, more thoughtful, less self-focused. Whether this represents genuine change or skilled manipulation remains to be seen. Bradley was released on parole last month. He found employment with a construction company and has been attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings 3 times weekly. His monthly restitution payments arrive promptly on the 1st of each month. $247 toward the $47,000 he owes from his unauthorized withdrawals from my accounts. Rebecca Thompson was sentenced to life imprisonment without possibility of parole. The investigation revealed 8 elderly victims over 2 years, with total insurance payouts exceeding $12 million. 3 additional cases are pending prosecution as evidence continues to emerge. My house feels different now. I've installed a comprehensive security system, not from paranoia, but from prudence. The cameras are visible, modern, and professionally monitored. I want any future visitors to understand that I'm paying attention. The dining room table displays 2 photographs side by side, Eleanor and me on our wedding day, and a recent picture of me with Dr. Hayes and her husband at a retirement dinner. The contrast represents my journey from grief-stricken isolation to cautious re-engagement with life. I've made several changes to my estate planning. The house will be donated to a charity supporting elder abuse prevention when I die. My savings account benefits the local hospital's cardiac unit, where Eleanor received excellent care during her final months. Jenny remains my beneficiary for one asset, a trust fund requiring her completion of rehabilitation programs and 3 years of demonstrated financial responsibility. If she meets these conditions, she'll receive $150,000 over 10 years. If she doesn't, the money supports nursing education scholarships. This arrangement reflects what I've learned about love and accountability. True care sometimes requires withholding immediate relief to encourage long-term growth. 6 months ago, I began volunteering with the county prosecutor's office, training investigators to recognize insurance fraud patterns in elder abuse cases. My experience has become a case study in their training materials. when the family becomes the threat. The work is satisfying. Each month I help identify 2 or 3 potential fraud schemes before they reach completion. It feels like putting my investigative skills toward prevention rather than prosecution. I've also started dating. Margaret Sullivan is a widow who volunteers at the library where Eleanor used to check out gardening books. Our relationship is careful, honest, and built on shared loss rather than desperate loneliness. We're both too old for games and too experienced for illusions. Margaret knows about Jenny's crime and incarceration. She understands my boundary-setting approach to family relationships. Her own son struggled with addiction for years before achieving sobriety, so she recognizes the difference between supporting someone and enabling their destructive choices. Last week, I updated my will again. Margaret receives my personal effects and the right to live in the house until her death. This gives her security without creating inheritance complications for my future relationship with Jenny. Some evenings, I sit in my study and review the evidence files from Jenny's case. Not from sadness or anger, but from professional curiosity about how I missed the warning signs. Could I have intervened earlier? Did my grief blind me to obvious red flags? The answer is probably yes. Emotional vulnerability creates investigative blindness. We see what we want to see from people we love. But I've also learned something unexpected. Survival creates strength. Discovering my daughter's betrayal was devastating, but surviving it proved I could handle more than I'd imagined. Eleanor's final advice echoes through these quiet moments. Love people enough to let them face the consequences of their choices. Jenny will be eligible for parole in 11 months. Whether she's earned a second chance remains to be determined. But I've learned something about second chances. They must be earned, not granted. Some bridges can be rebuilt, but only after you stop the arson.